Brick is Netflix's latest sci-fi mystery movie to be released on the platform, and it's safe to say that this was definitely a thought-provoking one, especially when it came to that ending. Focused around an apartment block being covered by these mysterious bricks, it entrapped all of the residents and left them with no water, no signal on their devices, and no way of finding out what happened and why they were trapped in there. The movie was centered around a couple that had experienced trauma in losing their child, Tim and Liv, and the fact that the relationship was going to end. However, the entrapment that they suffered could have been the very thing that allowed them to finally feel free. So with that, let's discuss the confusing ending, why the bricks were there, and the deeper meaning of it. Here is a review of Brick and the ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The ending explained. When it came to the ending of the movie, we saw that Tim's coding background helped when it came to finding a way of opening the wall that had covered the entirety of the apartment block. See, Liv, it wasn't all that crappy. By using the video footage of Anton using the app that he created to unlock the door and the flashes correlating to the buttons being pressed on the app, Tim and Liv worked out a way of getting outside. This wasn't before Yuri awoke after being shot several times and provided one final fight to really add that tension that wasn't needed. When the couple made it outside, we saw that it wasn't just that apartment block that they were in which was covered. It was the entirety of the city of Hamburg, as the broadcast on the radio at the end mentioned that it was in a state of emergency. All of the buildings had these bricks around them due to the fire that was present at the start of the movie at the Harbour District, which is where Epsilon Nano Defense was based. The bricks were created by them, and the fire there made the system believe that they were in a state of emergency, and it essentially put everybody into this lockdown mode where they couldn't leave their homes, hence why it was impenetrable. With both Tim and Liv getting in the van that Liv bought at the start of the movie with the intention of them driving off and going to Paris, but Tim declining the offer, they now both got in it, and they drove off through the city that was now covered in bricks. So what did it all truly mean? Well, the fact that Tim and Liv were the only two people that survived was telling of the idea that it took the both of them being trapped together for them to finally address the issue that had been plaguing their relationship, the death of their child, and whilst in the trapped state, they actually felt the most free that they'd ever felt. Tim hadn't been grieving properly and he threw himself into work, not allowing himself to think about the trauma and also have the time to heal with Liv. But by the end of the movie, with them sitting down and talking about it before escaping, we saw that they'd started the process of healing together and realized that their relationship didn't actually need to end. The repeated motif of the fly was something that I also feel like held some importance too. The fly originally started off trapped under a glass during the opening scene, and it was only at the end of the movie where it managed to escape and fly off, just like how Tim and Liv left Hamburg during the ending. So the fly also went on a journey. It felt like it was symbolic of mirroring the state that Tim was in. Tim originally tried to allow the fly to leave, but it just flew back in. I feel like this was symbolic of Tim's behavior, never addressing the issue that was at hand and not allowing himself that freedom, sitting behind the desk and channeling all of his energy into work, rather than giving his mind that time and space to grieve, ultimately returning to the very place where he was trapped with those thoughts. But with the fly escaping at the end with them, when Tim himself felt free, it felt like that was the point of the fly's inclusion. I also feel like the difference in opinions, the conspiracies that were present, the lies, spying, the deceit, and the fact that all of the people in the apartment block died before the end of the movie, other than two, was something that was telling of human behavior and the way that society can be when fear is present. Humans can turn on each other when opinions aren't the same and when also faced with the prospect of not truly knowing what's happening. So when it came to understanding if the outside world was contaminated like Yuri believed, which is why he killed Anton, it turned out that it wasn't. There was no danger that was present. In fact, most of the danger lay inside of the apartment building. It was all basically triggered by the fire that we saw at the start of the movie. Why did Mr. Friedman have no hands? See, I originally thought that Mr. Friedman had no hands because it was going to connect back to the age-old punishment that would often be done when people were caught stealing, but it didn't have any symbolic meaning whatsoever. We obviously found out that Mr. Friedman was a creep because he'd put in hidden cameras in everybody's apartments and he had his hidden room where he'd watch everybody's movements, but that actually had nothing to do with his death. One would have to imagine that because of what happened to Anna, where she was chopped in half due to the wall reforming, when the wall was originally put up, he may have had his hands out the window or something like that, which meant that they were removed from his body and then he ultimately died of blood loss. So no hidden killer was working their way through the apartment block, other than Yuri, that is. My review of the movie. I thought this movie was pretty average, to be honest. I thought it would be better than what it was, and there'd be a deeper and stronger meaning behind why the wall was there and what its purpose was. When the reveal of it all basically just being triggered by a fire at the Harbour District was what it turned out to be, I just felt a bit disappointed and underwhelmed. It was all basically for nothing, and it kind of made the proactivity of the characters the very thing that caused them all to die, rather than rewarding them. The authorities on the outside were looking for ways to rescue them all, so help wasn't actually that far away. If they had have sat tight, they would have all got out probably. When it came to the performances from the characters, I thought they were just okay. There were no standout performances in my opinion, and I think it was more of a bunch of tick box performances in making sure that they just hit the marks when they needed to with the delivery. The story, even though it was a mystery, it was relatively predictable in the sense that you could see that it would only be Liv and Tim that remained at the end, and the other characters would all meet their demise. The plot armor that they gave Yuri and having him get shot a bunch of times, then fall asleep, wake up, and then have the strength to outfight Tim and Liv at the same time was genuinely ridiculous. I just didn't buy into that, and I thought it was a silly decision. We didn't need that final fight, because by that point, we were just waiting to find out if Liv and Tim were going to escape and what the outside world was like. Yuri should have died long before that. I also thought Liv just standing there watching Yuri be on the cusp of killing the person that she loved most for a large portion of that fight felt a bit ridiculous too. She just stood there watching it happen, which I don't think would be the case in reality. I also thought that Tim basically accepting death and telling her to leave felt very unrealistic too. They both had no fight in them, and I just didn't buy that in that situation you'd accept death for yourself and also accept death for the person that you care about most. This is a movie that I feel is just quite easy to watch, and you're not going to be frustrated by much in it. Underwhelmed? Yeah, I think you will be. But it's just one of those movies that wouldn't really exist without Netflix, because it's not good enough to go in the cinema. If anything, it's like a straight-to-DVD movie from the mid-2000s. It's a throw it on during a Friday or Saturday night if there's nothing else on with your takeaway. I wouldn't say go out your way to watch it, because I just don't think it was that interesting, and the ending, which is what this movie was relying on landing to make it as impactful as possible, just didn't quite work. So if you want to watch it, then give it a go, but if you decide not to, I don't think you're missing out on much at all. There's plenty of better things to watch. So, there you have it, a review of Brick and the ending explained. If you want to see more of your favourite TV series and movies being broken down, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. If you also want to see what I gave this movie out of 5 stars, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time and also the movies that I don't get around to covering on the channel. What did you think of this movie? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.